Well, welcome back guys to another chapter review of Black Clover, chapter 263, early release based on spoilers. As always, take it with a grain of salt and any changes we will pick up in future subsequent videos. So without further ado, let's get into this review. So, the chapter. Before we get into the chapter, I want to just cover some differences the official translation did compared to the spoiler translations that I referred to in my last video. So the first thing to bear in mind is the devil's name is Gimadello. So the slight difference in name. He doesn't refer to NACHT as Sir NACHT, but he is on friendly terms with him. And he still says that this is not his true form. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the thing with the captains at the end. He still says, look, I don't like people that can't really arrange meetings, so he's quite stern, but he seems to be more polite about it in his own way. So that's something I just wanted to kind of cover just to get this out of the way. Now, the chapter does a very good job of establishing timelines and as well as establishing the new big bad. So we initially thought, yes, the Dark Triad are the worst things. We found out about the tree, and we found out about the demons, but we're given very specific things here. Number one, we're told that there's 10 demons, and number two, we're told that Lucifer is the worst and the strongest demon of them all. So I like the fact that we go through that and we get some very specific details to add more layers and structure to the new big bad of this arc. So that's very important. So let's kind of go through what essentially happens, not necessarily verbatim, but to go through the events, and then I'll give my thoughts at the end and things to consider, and maybe a little bit of theory time if we have enough time. Just to point out, this video is recorded late on the Friday. I will be releasing this on the Saturday, but by the time this video comes out, no one's really going to care. And a lot of people that watch this video, the other small community that we do have, they won't mind, I'm sure, as plenty of people with bigger communities have already probably released some fancy video with some fancy thumbnail that everyone's going to check out anyway. So no overall spoilers for them people, but as always I will post a link in relevant areas tomorrow, as well as when the official chapter drops, 5 o'clock UK time PM on the Sunday. That being said, the key events. So naturally this guy's infiltrated this captain's meeting, the captains react, but before they can react, 4 other shadow demons essentially come out and subdue to some degree 4 of the captains, including Nazel, Jack the Ripper, Charla and Fuego Leon. This is quite telling when you think about the overall captains. There's 9 of them. 2 of them are missing, so there's 7 that are basically going to be there, and the ones that get essentially caught are what we normally consider to be the higher ups, or the more stronger captains, because the Purple Orca's captain is fairly new. The Peacock's captain is always asleep, and Lil Ball Malta, the Azor Deer guy, tends to just chill anyway. So that kind of explains that. Now, we shouldn't really get this twisted, because realistically he isn't harming them and they haven't fully activated the magics. We don't know the extent of how his magic compares to these people. Does he mean he's the strongest vice captain? Possibly, with devil power is quite feasible given the level of cooperativeness he has with his demon, and we all saw how they wiped the floor with the Golden Dawn as well as Does that mean he's as strong as the Dark Triad? We don't know. I've hoped he is. I've speculated he is. But there's things in this chapter that may prove otherwise. That being said, once he's essentially established that, he then basically said, look, calm down. I'm here to provide interesting information. And they're like, what are you doing here? It's important to note at this point that it is Julius that recognizes him first and says, yes, he's the vice captain of the Black Bulls. He has every right to be here, but he didn't know that he was demon possessed. That's important because we later find out that in this chapter that both of these people, so we're talking about Yami here and NACHT, were both members of the Grey Deer under Julius. So Grey Deer was the original name under Julius before it got changed to Azure Deer later. So that's important to bear in mind. Now Jack eventually does recognize him, and he says something very telling, and this will kind of lead into the theory time at the end. He says, "But your magic power," and NACHT cuts him off essentially. So that's something that's going to be built. It's like a breadcrumb for a revelation later that his magic is different than what it was supposed to be. So the assumption is he had a type of magic. He's not using that magic anymore, and he uses shadow magic now. So that bear that in mind. So Jack didn't recognize him at first, but he eventually does. So let's get that out of the way. Next thing, we get some very specific details. I've already discussed the 10 demons, but we get some clarification as to why Yami is alive now and how he's sure of that. So NACHT explains that essentially the tree takes 7 days to fully activate. There's 7 levels, 7 layers, 7 gates, and they all take open slowly over the period of 7 days. We also get told that it will start descending the tree, or it will be activating in 3 days time. So what this effectively means, we've got a rough timeline of 10 days. He also says that the upper levels of the actual tree, the power levels of those demons are very similar to the dark triads. Now it's very important to bear this in mind, that he's referring to not the demons, he's referring to the people that are possessed by the demons. The reason why that's important is because one of the members has Lucifero, Dante, and basically Lucifero is the strongest. So ultimately we want to clarify that. It's, from what I'm understanding, is he's referring to the levels that the vessels are operating at, rather than the demons individually, because as we know, the demons are stronger when they're in their actual physical forms rather than a vessel or a connection. So that's very important to bear in mind. So the upper levels, now in the diagram, in the first level or so, there's like 2 or 3 of the demons. These could be pointing to Magicula and the unknown demon that Xenon has. And then there's different ones scattered around, and at the bottom we see there's a last demon, which is Lucifero. Now Lucifero is important because if he's released, essentially it's game over, the world's ending, and that's kind of the one thing that they're ultimately going to need to stop. It's also stated that up until that final gate opens, Yami and William will be alive, and ultimately if it does open, there will be basically sacrifices. And the idea behind this is they're going to do an elite team, and they're going to start the counter-attack. So it gives us a time scale. Now, he also states that his power will not be enough to defeat the Dark Triad. This doesn't state that he's weaker than them. It doesn't state that he's as strong as them. It literally says that he can't defeat them with his magic. Ultimately, what I think I can take from this, or maybe the readers can as well, is that the actual magic style or type doesn't suit combating them, or it might be that he can't combat all 3 of them. He may have a better chance one-on-one, or maybe stylistically magic attributes going against each other, it doesn't work out well for them. But he specifically states that Asta's anti-magic is probably the best counter for it, and he will make him the strongest weapon essentially to counteract that. This is very important for a few different reasons. Now, it's important because if you think about the story from a linear point of view, we see what he did at the beginning, he got a ranking, and we've not really seen anything since. We've had some comparisons, so when they went to the Seabed Temple, they had fights with people that were essentially intermediate tier, and they overcame them, and then the people that were at the top, they struggled against them to get to the win. So since then, he's gone through a lot of trials and tribulations, he's got stronger, he's had the 6 months training, with the Heart Kingdom 0 stage members, training there. He's also had this contract that he established for one of his arms with his demon. So we'll get to see now with this additional training, where does he stack up? Is he going to be vice captain level? Is where does he really stack up? He's not going to be Grand Magic Knight level, captain level, potentially just yet. But it's good to know that they're specifically stating that he's going to get stronger, and there's time for Yuno to also get stronger as well. So that's interesting to bear in mind. That being said, there's a lot of things to digest, and I'm really looking forward to what happens next. So the little few seconds that we've got at the end, I'm gonna touch on a few things. Number one, it's interesting about the second power, as in NACHT had one power and now he's using a different power. This leads me to believe that some type of process or sacrifice happened, and he lost his original power to get his current demon power. That's very interesting and very telling, because we know that the actual main character Asta doesn't have any magic. He's lost magic, or he doesn't have magic. Could it possibly be that essentially Asta had a magic ability, but it was taken from him in a sacrifice, and the vessel, his body, was taken away from Dante and the other Dark Triad members before they could essentially put a demon in him, make him a proper vessel. So it's quite possible that's the actual link to the Dark Triad, because we thought it might be a sibling, but he may be an original, like an attempt or original sacrifice for the Dark Triad to get the ability. So all these magic abilities that the Dark Triads are showing are possibly ones that they gain after, and they lost their original magic, and maybe Asta was the test. So that's an interesting tidbit I wanted to mention as a little bit of theory time at the end, just because that's a really interesting overall little crumble that we put in there, and that's possibly the background of Asta that we haven't really heard from. Now, also I want to mention that what I think is going to happen, there's a few different things. Now, what I like about Reddit is a lot of people throw their ideas about, and one of the ideas is that because essentially we haven't seen Yami's like home country, so there's a very good chance that he's going to survive. He's had death flags before with the fights with the third eye, and the captains jumped in at the last second. So because Julius survived, people think Yami's going to survive. Another theory that people have thrown out there is that because the shadow magic for NACHT is very similar to dark magic, that he could basically be a person that's used instead in this battle as a sacrifice rather than Yami. Now with William's case, because he's essentially done these bad things, if he sacrifices himself, it kind of is like an atonement for all the bad deeds he did with the whole Patrice situation. That being said, it all remains to be seen. We have to kind of sit down and wait as the chapters reveal themselves, and hopefully we'll find out very soon. Is my theory correct? Am I, sniffing up the wrong tree? We'll have to wait and see. But as always, we'll have to wait till the next chapter's release. And until then, I must bid you adieu. Take care. Peace. See you next time.